How are the African National Congress pending court rulings likely to impact its National Elective Conference? Was it wrong for the Mpumalanga province to vote for unity? And which presidential candidate stands a much better chance to succeed President Jacob Zuma? And one can be made of Gwede Mantashe conceding that the threat of the ANC losing power is real. Good afternoon. What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Simpio Ngongwane, in for Mpotsedu. Only 12 days are left before the African National Congress holds its National Elective Conference. The outcome of the 54th conference is expected to determine the direction the governing party will take as it prepares for the national elections in 2 years' time. Some ANC officials are saying the governing party might lose power in 2019. Closing the Provincial General Council, Gauteng ANC chairperson Paul Mashatile said the ANC might lose power if it fails to deal with factionalism within its ranks. The Secretary General Gwede Mantashe said the ANC's highest election results way back in 2009. He also alluded to the risk of the 105-year-old party losing power. Meanwhile, Mpumalanga has caused a stir by having delegates voting for unity. We are live. Therefore, you can call us and air your views on the following numbers: 089 110 4210. The international number is +27 89 110 4210. You can tweet us your comments. Our Twitter handle is @QuestionTime24. Well, my guest today is Professor Stephen Friedman, a political analyst, and he joins me now in studio. A very good afternoon to you, Professor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. Now, as they say, Professor, anywhere the wind blows, taking into cognizance the recent developments that have been happening within the ANC, can you or do you see which direction the wind is blowing?
Yes, I think we can simply. I mean, the winds are blowing in two directions at the same time, neither of which are very healthy for the ANC. The one, as you mentioned in your intro, is that if we look at the by-elections which were held last week, they confirm that voters are deserting the ANC. There's been a lot of attention, rightly so, to the Metsimaholo by-elections because they were much more dramatic and the SABC fought them. But in Umlalazi, in KZN, the ANC lost to the IFP, and the ANC has been losing a string of by-elections to the IFP over the last while or so. So that shows you that the ANC is losing votes in rural areas. Metsimaholo shows you that they're losing votes in urban areas, and they obviously have to worry about that. The other way the wind is blowing, which is very concerning to the ANC, is that if the ANC in 12 days' time goes into that conference and has a full election as everybody's expecting, there's no guarantee that that will be allowed to stand by whoever loses, because we've seen all these court cases, we've seen all these challenges, we've seen chairs flying. The likelihood is that whoever loses will claim that they were cheated, and then the ANC will be in crisis again.
Yeah. Now, does the so-called poor performance of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma compromise President Zuma or make him vulnerable? I mean, I'm reading into reports that he's actually banking on Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma to clinch the presidency so that she protects him.
Well, I don't think it's about protecting him. I think it's about protecting a faction. I don't think that anybody who wins is going to prosecute Mr. Zuma, quite frankly. But I'm a bit puzzled about this poor performance of hers, because we really don't know which way this election is going to go. I mean, one of the scary things for the ANC is that both sides claim they're winning. If you speak to NDZ people, they're far ahead. If you speak to CR people, they're also far ahead. Now, in the short term, that may help the conference, because if both sides go into the conference believing they're going to win, then they'll let the conference happen. But as I said earlier, as soon as one side loses, they'll say, but sorry, our figures showed that we were winning, we've been cheated in some way, the delegates were not properly chosen, whatever the case may be.
Should we rely on the figures that have been coming through in terms of the nominations? I mean, anything can happen on the day of the voting.
Well, that's the problem, you see. The problem is, you know, South Africans get very enthusiastic at the moment about secret ballots. The problem about secret ballots is you should never, ever give a secret ballot to somebody who's voting on behalf of other people. If you and I go to a polling booth, we can use a secret ballot. We're only speaking on behalf of ourselves. It's nobody else's business which way we vote. If you're voting on behalf of other people, they have a right to know which way you voted. So you have this strange system where people get sent to the ANC conference by their branches, and when they get there, they can vote in a secret ballot. So the branch never knows whether you voted the way the branch wanted you to vote. That can't be a fair system. And it means that in principle, it doesn't matter who's ahead in branch general meeting nominations, it may not reflect who wins on the day at all.
Right. All right, Professor, let's go to KZN, and Sianda is there. Very good evening, very good afternoon to you, Sianda.
Good afternoon. Thanks very much. Just to a short point.
Yeah.
The first one is that ANC is not the private organization of the Zulus. I am a Zulu. What President Zuma has done is to create a perception that the ANC must also be led by a Zulu or a Nguni. And our appeal goes to all 9 provinces to support a leader who is not carrying a burden of that was created in 1912. Because that is the key thing. The second one, Dr. Gosoma is a good comrade, but it is very clear that she is there to defend the stomachs of the Zuma family. The likes of Roy Motley, the likes of Prashant Kande and others. And the ANC must speak against that by voting, not because Ramaphosa is the best, he is better than any other and this comrade, but he's not the best. But it's better to have that person rather than to have a leader who is going to sell us in the Russians and the Guptas. Thank you.
All right, Sianda, thank you so much for your call. Well, Sianda's line, Professor, wasn't that clear, but then I did, in my understanding of his statement, is that the ANC cannot be tribalized. I mean, it's got nothing to do with being a Zulu party or a Xhosa party.
Yeah, you see, this comes up all the time. And remember that previously there were all these stories about how the ANC was the Xhosa party with Mandela and Tambo, etc.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are these fears, well, is it a Zulu party, etc. That's a very real concern among a lot of people. But, you know, if we look at if we look at what's coming out of the ANC at the moment, I mean, the ANC has a lot of problems at the moment, but it's not quite clear that that's what's happening. I mean, Free State has voted for Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma in big numbers. Free State is not a Zulu province. Right. Northern Cape has voted overwhelmingly for Cyril Ramaphosa. I mean, he comes from Limpopo, you know. So I think that there are legitimate concerns about, you know, people feel that one group shouldn't dominate the ANC. But the reality is that although ethnic voting may play some role in the ANC, it doesn't play as big a role as most people seem to think.
All right, let's go to Limpopo now, and Andrew is there. A very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
How are you?
Great, how are you, man? What's in your mind?
Good. Listen, sir, my view is that there are people within the ANC who want to see an individual winning and not the ANC winning. So people are just pushing for Nkosazana Zuma, according to my view, for the sake of protecting themselves somewhere. And the lobbyists, some of them, because they have got cash within their hands, they are just pushing in the branches so that they can just see somebody winning and not the ANC winning. Because according to me, if she wins December times, obviously 2019 they are out. That's my view.
So just before I let you go there, Andrew, if you're saying that you are against an individual winning, who then do you think should win?
Well, it must be the ANC which is winning based on relevant nominations and looking at the people who should be leading, not being attached to other people who have got a lot of scandals. Because that's where we are having a fear. Because once you are close to somebody who's got some scandals, and people wanted the very same person to win, it makes us fear.
That's exactly what's happening, Andrew. The ANC needs to see people occupying the top 6 positions. Certain people should go and occupy those positions.
Exactly, but then let's get people who are very clean.
All right.
Let's get clean people.
All right. Thank you so much for your call there, Andrew. That is Andrew all the way from Limpopo. The professor will definitely address that concern after the break. A reminder that you can call us and air your views. The number to call is 089-110-4210. If you're calling from beyond the borders, it's +27 89-110-4210. Question time. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
The countdown has begun. The ANC decides on leadership and policies.
Branches are stolen, they are rigged, BGMs are not convened properly.
We were offered, not in words or in numbers, but we were offered something in return.
Join the debate.
The radical economic transformation is not just a rhetoric concept. It is all about free and quality education.
I'm Aldrin St-Pierre on this special assignment this Monday, 9 p.m. on Channel 404.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time, and let's continue the discussion with the professor now. Just before into that ad break, we had Andrew from Limpopo talking about, I'm sure you did understand the gist of Andrew's call.
Yeah, what he was asking, as I understood, is why aren't ANC delegates making sure that they elect the candidate who's most likely to win in 2019? Now, that's a very interesting question, because this is the first ANC conference ever in which the next general election in the country may depend on what the ANC do at this conference. If the ANC don't elect a leader and take an approach which wins back the trust of those voters we talked about earlier who are leaving the ANC, then there's a very real chance that the ANC will lose its majority in 2019. Yeah. Now, of course, the problem about all this is that Andrew believes that of course, Dlamini Zuma is going to lose the ANC the election. I'm sure that if you spoke to her camp, they'd tell you that Cyril Ramaphosa is going to lose the election. All I can tell you on that, and we never know how accurate these things are. Yeah. There was an opinion poll conducted a few weeks ago, published a few weeks ago, in which ANC voters were actually asked whether each candidate would make them more or less likely to vote for the ANC. And by a very large number, those people who answered the poll said that if Cyril Ramaphosa was elected, they would be more likely, and if, of course, Dlamini Zuma was elected, they'd be less likely. Yeah. So if you believe that poll, then Andrew's right. But you never know whether polls are right until you actually see the way people vote. Indeed,
Professor. Let's now go to Mpumalanga. The outcomes of that province's PGC were quite fascinating, with the Premier David Mabuza saying that insisting on this so-called unity slate, which collected a huge chunk of the votes over the past weekend, and over the firm favourites Nkosazana and Cyril Ramaphosa, and it led to one of the candidates, Matthew Posa, actually filing court papers seeking to annul the outcome of the PGC. What's the rationale behind the so-called unity slate?
Well, if you believe Mr. Mabuza, the rationale behind this is that he believes, and he said so publicly, that the ANC cannot win the 2019 election if it's divided. And he believes that the only way in which the ANC can unite is if the leaders of both groups get together in a room and divide up the positions between them, what he was calling on Sunday consensus leadership. So in order to try to put pressure on for that, he's instructed those branches who are loyal to him to not vote for either candidate, but to simply say they're voting for unity. Now, if you're hostile to Mr. Mabuza, if you're one of his critics, you say the reason he's doing this is not because he believes in unity, but he's trying to get the best deal from either side to become deputy president. Right. Because, of course, what he's hoping is that those 223, I think it is, branches who voted unity will follow his instructions at the conference and vote the way he wants them to do at a conference, which makes him very powerful, etc. Of course, that may not happen. And the other thing that may happen, and that's where Matthew Posa comes in, is that if Mr. Posa goes ahead, the court may well say, and there would be a very strong argument for that, look, you can't go and send a delegate to a conference to vote for somebody called Unity who doesn't exist. Unless you actually sent them there with a mandate, then it's not a valid delegate. And there's a possibility that if Mr. Posa brings that action, those delegates could be thrown out of the conference by the court.
Mr. Posa is actually suggesting that they have breached the ANC constitution, which says that only a person, a human being, needs to be nominated, and that person needs to be a good member or a member of good standing for the past 10 years or so.
Well, I mean, I would have to go back. I have looked at the ANC constitution quite a lot. I mean, obviously they didn't think that they needed to make the point that you needed a person. They assumed that that would be automatic. Mm. But I think he may well be correct to say it says, well, whoever's elected must be, whoever's nominated must be a member in good standing. I think it does say that. So obviously in the court action it would be to say, well, whoever this Unity person is, they're not a member in good standing and therefore they can't be nominated for. Sure. And the question then becomes, you see, obviously they're not going to vote for Unity at the conference. They're going to vote for one of the candidates. But the question then becomes, are they going to be allowed to vote at all? Because if the court agrees with Mr. Posa, then they will probably not be allowed to vote at the conference because they haven't made a valid nomination.
I'm actually curious, Professor, to know what games is David Mabuza playing, because we now know that he's already secured the deputy presidency should the scales tip in Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's favor in 12 days' time. But then he still hasn't come out in the open to support, to state whom he's backing.
Well, once again, it depends whether you believe him or his critics. If you believe him, he's saying, yes, it's very nice that I'm the deputy president on Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's slate. I don't believe she can win. He's made that quite clear. I don't believe she can win in 2019, and therefore I would rather the ANC won the election. He even said on Sunday when he was asked he'd give up his deputy presidency nomination if that meant that the ANC had a winning slate. Once again, if you're a critic of Mr. Mabuza's, you're saying that his game is that he thinks that Ramaphosa is going to win. He's not on the Ramaphosa slate. He wants to, if you like, hold a gun to Ramaphosa's head and say, look, unless you put me on your slate, those 223 people are going to vote for Dlamini Zuma. So once again, it depends on whether you are an admirer of Mr. Mabuza.
It actually makes him a very powerful figure. I mean, because he's now the potential kingmaker. But then do hold that thought, Professor. Let's now go to Nelspruit, and Felix is there. Very good evening to you, Felix.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Pleasure. What's on your mind?
Yes. I think I would say Dlamini Zuma is a good person. He's a person who has proven record. But the problem is this: he is severely compromised by the fact that Jacob Zuma is campaigning tooth and nail for her. It is problematic because we know Jacob Zuma has already destroyed ANC. There's nothing really left of ANC. If Dlamini Zuma wins, that will be the final nail in the coffin of ANC. Mark my words, I'm saying this confidently. That's because Jacob Zuma himself is the elephant in the room. He has no credibility. He has destroyed our constitution. He failed to respect, uphold, and defend our constitution. Technically speaking, Jacob Zuma is not even the president of this country anymore, technically speaking, because he didn't uphold our constitution. So if you are campaigning for Dlamini Zuma, he has compromised him completely. And I do believe that ANC should fight strongly so that Dlamini Zuma does not win.
All right, Felix, thank you so much for a call. I suppose that's the general sentiment, Professor.
Well, we don't know. I mean, it looks like it may well be. I mean, you have to ask yourself why does the ANC go down to 35% in Metsimaholo? You know, it's obviously voters are sending a message that they don't like the leadership. So that is why I say, you know, whatever your views on Mr. Zuma, the ANC's challenge is that if it comes out of this conference with a leadership which most voters believe is the same as the old leadership, then what the by-elections are telling us is that the ANC is in very deep trouble in 2019. And that's why Gwede Mantashe is saying this, and that's why Paul Mashatile is saying this, and that's why Didi Mabuza is saying this. Because if you look at those election results, the ANC needs to turn this around, because if the ANC doesn't turn this around, there's no way it's guaranteed of getting 50% of the vote in 2019.
Yeah. Now, with most provinces having made their pronouncement on who they want to lead the party in 12 days' time, and Zolim Kiza not in the top two of either slate or faction, as it were, he's not completely out of the picture now, is he? Because he could emerge as the, you know, as the unity candidate. Is that
yes,
likely?
Indeed. You see, this is the issue which people are ignoring. If you get to a situation, I mean, obviously, if you look at the branch nominations, there's no way Zweli Mkhize is going to be nominated for the presidency by more than a handful of branches. But if you get to the situation that I was talking about earlier, which Mabuza has been talking about, where there are so many challenges, and you could get to that situation, there are so many challenges, court actions, people standing up at the conference and saying, we don't accept this delegate's credentials or those delegations' credentials, etc. Then you may have a situation in which the only way the ANC can choose a leadership is if they get into a room and say, let's divide up the positions. Now, if that happens, who is going to be president? Because both sides are going to say, well, you can have half the thing, but we want the president. So in that situation, if they have to get into that room and make a deal, they might have to say, look, the only way we can satisfy both sides is if neither of them are president. You have a third person who's on neither slate who's president, and who's the obvious person who's on neither slate? That would be the Treasurer General. So that would be his route to the presidency. You must make the point also that whatever comes out of these backroom negotiations, etc. He still, as far as I know, has a reason, despite the fact that he's not on a slate, he still has a reasonable prospect of being deputy president. He's doing quite well in the nominations for the deputy presidency, but he can't be president unless there's a deal between the two factions.
And the jury's still out on whether he can make, a very unique or a good unity candidate, given the reports that have been making the rounds that President Zuma is now causing up to him. But let's now go to Peter Marisburg, and Patrick is there. Very good evening to you, Patrick.
Hello, good evening. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? What's in your mind?
All right, my name is Patrick Mtima. I'm surprised that there are some people who can stoop so low to think that you carry a Zuma surname, Zuma or Mandela, what surname, then you can't be elected for any position. What is important is this surname or the marital status or your ability to lead. Because Dlamini Zuma has held so many positions, and the top one was the AU. She did very well. There was no question about her surname. And I think also anyone who should be supported in the ANC, whoever emerges the winner. I'm surprised if there are people who say that if so-and-so wins, the ANC is going to lose elections. Because what it means that they are going to canvass support for the opposition just to fight that their preferred candidate lost in the election. Some of the remarks really, they are very, I'm stupid, I'm sorry to use that name. If so-and-so wins, we should all rally behind him or her. You can't say that the ANC is going to win. They should stop idolizing individuals. They should love the movement as a whole. Thank you, sir.
All right, Patrick, thank you so much for calling us. How do you respond to that?
Well, whatever Patrick's view is, I mean, what really matters is what voters' views are. And voters may well be influenced by individuals. But there's another issue at stake as far as voters are concerned. It's not only the individual person, it's what that person represents. And the problem that Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma has with voters is that she's associated with Mr. Zuma's faction. Right. And that faction, in the minds of many voters, seems to be associated with behavior that voters don't like. So it's a bit unrealistic to say, well, everybody in the ANC should unite behind the candidate. Because if voters are making it quite clear that they don't like that candidate, unity is not going to help you.
ANC has all along been trying, quite frankly, frantically to fight slate politics. Is it losing the war against gatekeeping and slate politics?
Well, it's an interesting question, Simpiwe, because they are doing things now which are an attempt to win the war a bit. And of course, what they're doing is there's going to be there's supposed to be a different voting system at this conference. And previously, you've gone into a room and the delegates have chosen a top 6, and that makes slate voting inevitable. Now what they want to do is have each election separately. And they are hoping that what that will do will create a situation in which people won't necessarily vote slates. There is an interesting development. If you look at those branch nominations, they are different from previous years. You are seeing, I mean, Cyril Ramaphosa publicly called for Naledi Pandor to be his deputy president. Branches are voting for Cyril Ramaphosa. They're voting for Lindiwe Sisulu as deputy president. They're voting for Zweli Mkhize in some cases. They're even voting in some cases for Didi Mabuza. So there may be some prospect that slate politics is beginning to wind down. But interestingly, that's only going to be if the leadership is sending that message. Because it's the leadership complain about state politics the whole time. They created the slate politics. I mean, some of us were at the Polokwane conference observing. We saw the people on the floor giving people lists of which slate to vote for and which slate not to vote for, which was coming from senior leadership.
So can the ANC, in closing, can the ANC avoid a winner-takes-all scenario?
Well, I think that the ANC, I think I put the problem a different way. If there is a winner-takes-all scenario, can the ANC survive that? Because first of all, we don't even know whether the conference will finish, because people will stand up. You already got people in the Eastern Cape saying they're going to go there and challenge the result of the provincial election. And I guarantee you that if they challenge that, then the Northwest people will challenge that, and the Free State people will challenge that, etc. So even if they manage to survive that, which I very much doubt, because it could land up in court, it could land up in a non-conference, then they have to win the 2019 election, and they'll probably have a split, and they won't be able to do that.
Indeed. Now, just in closing, 20 seconds, Makosi Khoza has just launched a new party. Should the ANC be afraid in 2019?
No, I don't think so. You need networks on the ground to win votes, and I don't think that party has networks. And unless you have those networks, you really are a very marginal party.
All right, Professor Friedman, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That was Question Time for today. A big thank you to my guest and for you at home for watching. Till next time then, it's goodbye from Johannesburg.